It's the election! The manifestos have been published, the debates have been debated, but is this the most stage-managed election in 30 years? Are the Westminster parties saying one thing while doing another? And what do smaller parties make of it all? My name is Stephen Payton and you're watching Left Scotland. Remember this?
The truth is, the future for Scotland is not leaving the United Kingdom, it is leading the United Kingdom, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, that was back in September of last year, a week before the referendum. And now...
The Conservatives are trying to show that the Labour Party would be in power but controlled by the SNP. But there is no deal. There is no coalition pact. There is never going to be an arrangement between the Labour Party and the SNP.
Yeah, pretty bold words considering that the SNP have support of around 48% of the electorate in Scotland, according to recent polling. After all, why try to work with those chosen to represent Scotland through a democratic vote? When we were told that Scotland should lead the UK, it appears that what Brown really meant was that Scotland should vote for the establishment and quieten back down. Of course, he isn't the only one. The press that begged us to stay are now terrified that a party not based in London may have actual power in Westminster. It isn't an outrage to democracy. It's democracy in action. Of course, that's overlooking how flawed the first-past-the-post voting system is, but that's a story for another day. Now, what I find especially worrying about the whole situation is how desperate the mediums through which we consume news are trying to influence our decisions. Don't ever forget the newspapers have an agenda, and we are seeing it come through over and over. Here's David Cameron at a rally in Wadebridge. Pretty crowded, right? Well, no, wrong. And this is Jim Murphy kicking about with presumably what's left of Scottish Labour as it appears in the papers and as it is in reality. Now, of course, Murphy and Cameron want you to see the slightly managed photos. That's in their interest. My real question is, why are the press, who are meant to report on the news, showing me this, but not this? A contact from a Scottish newsroom informed me that there had been reports that Labour and the Conservatives were requesting copies of the questions that were to be asked before interviews with major political figures, although there are rumours of all parties doing this. And of course, they said no. Andrew Grice, writing for The Independent, has said that this general election has been the most stage managed he's covered in 30 years. We're talking about carefully chosen and vetted attendees and locations. When Nick Clegg, leader of the Lib Dems, arrived in Mid-Dorset and North Pool, the team waiting for him had rehearsed his arrival 3 times to get the cheering just right for the cameras. Appearance has become the focus of the party's campaigning for our votes. Don't they get that if they just sat down and spoke to us, they'd have a better chance of getting them? This approach has definitely contributed to the complete destruction of Labour in Scotland. It's appearing to do one thing, but actually doing another. So Labour say they're against zero-hour contracts, while 68 Labour MPs, including Ed Balls, have been employing interns on them for the past 2 years. Or with the Conservatives, who don't want to get rid of them, but have decided that if they change the name to flexible hour contracts, that somehow solves the problem. Speaking of which, I've decided to rename my crippling debt as minus money. And the best part about minus money is, the more of it you spend, the more of it you have. So Jim Murphy says during the leaders' debates that there won't be any further cuts in Scotland from the Labour Party, only for Ed Balls, Labour Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, to say that actually there will be. Then Labour's Chuka Umunna comes out to say that the leader of the Scottish Labour Party will not be in charge of the UK budget. Or when the Conservatives say that they want to devolve more powers to Scotland, but then implement an annual impact report that means if we use them to do our own thing, they'll punish us. So for example, if we lower air passenger duty tax, which I'm not saying that we should, and more people come up to Scotland to fly abroad, meaning less use of airports in England, we basically get sued by the rest of the UK and have to pay compensation. We're free to use the powers that are devolved to us as long as we stick to what everyone else is doing. Appearance, reality. See, as much as the Conservatives tell us that they've pulled the UK back from the brink, a report from the Social Market Foundation revealed that the richest in the UK are 64% richer now than they were before the recession, while the poorest are 57% poorer. I mean, just look at how food bank use has grown between 2009 and 2013. 2/3 of economists are saying that the coalition government has actually harmed the economy. Meanwhile, our whole understanding of what the parties even represent crumbles around us. Miliband reached out and said that Conservatives would find a home in Labour. The Conservatives reached out and said that they were the party of the working class. Youth representatives of the Scottish Trade Unions Congress, which has a long history with Labour, marched out of a dinner in protest when it turned out that Jim Murphy, leader of Scottish Labour, had been invited, branding him an enemy of working people. If I can find One positive reason to vote for the establishment parties is that Katie Hopkins has promised to leave the UK if Miliband becomes Prime Minister. That's everything from this week's episode of Left Scotland. Please do share, like and subscribe. I'll be with you as we count down to the election. If you're interested in seeing a little more of Left Scotland, then let me suit up and tell you a story. Back in 2011, I started a video production company with a few friends. 4 years I ran that business, then the independence referendum came round and changed everything. Scotland went through something of an identity crisis, and I started a series of weekly videos exploring stories that weren't been talked about in the mainstream press. These videos have been watched over 135,000 times, and this is only the beginning. Scotland wanted a vibrant alternative media, and 6 months after the referendum, it's still growing. That's why I'm leaving my business, and I'm going off to try something new. Left Scotland. It's an online channel covering left-wing and radical politics in Scotland, but it's more than just a weekly show. It's also a resource for activists, and I'm already in talks about collaborative projects across the country. Ever wanted to set up a demo in George Square or get a community campaign off the ground? Well, me too. And I intend to create a short series of videos exploring how to do that. But I need your help. Every penny raised goes towards creating an online channel funded by the public for the public. That means regularly scheduled content, interviews, a resource for activists, and a spotlight on campaigns and community victories. The money goes towards allowing me to create content full-time for a solid 6 months, as well as investing it in kit, like this. And in advertising to help spread the word and to keep quality of video high. Social media has become one of the most disruptive tools in sharing news and views, and we are all connected. The way that we create and consume information now is changing, and I want you to be a part of this. Plus, if you invest, there are some really awesome perks. So let's do this. While we still can.